Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. In this video, I will be making a quick VR to Brian Cormac Carr and his tag Tarot 5Ws. I will link Brian's original video in the description box below. He also made a second one responding to his own tag, so you can find that on his channel. And there are some prizes for this tag if you get a VR in the next little while, so do think about making one if you'd like. Whether the prizes interest you or not, it's a good tag with lots of flexibility. So the Tarot 5Ws, of course, are who, what, when, where, and why. And for each of these, Brian has given some suggested kind of ways of approaching them, but you're also free to kind of make up your own questions as well. So for some of mine, I've used one of Brian's suggestions verbatim, and for others, I've kind of gone off of the suggestions a little bit to come up with my own. So I will timestamp below. Who? For who, I chose one of the given questions. Who first turned you on to tarot? And I have to say to that question that the answer would be my family. I didn't have anybody who read tarot in my family, but my family did get me my first deck ever. That's upside down. The Jonathan D. Tarot pack. And, I've shown this deck before. This would have been, more than a couple of decades ago now that I got this, or about a couple of decades, about 20 years ago now, from my mom and my grandma who knew that I wanted one. But my family also would have turned me on to tarot in the sense of having some playing card readers in the family as kind of very recent ancestors. Divination is a thing that I grew up knowing about, so I'm sure it would be a family context where I would learn about tarot first, even though I didn't grow up with tarot in my house or anything like that. And the second question is what? And for the what question, I chose the question, what do you most love about tarot? And I feel like this is a really hard question for a lot of us who love a lot about tarot and love tarot very much and have loved tarot for a long time. It's hard to think of something, but for me, I feel like having a kind of system, and I think a lot of people will say, the system is something that appeals to them. Having a system like tarot, or sets of systems like tarot, that have been kind of interpreted and reinterpreted and reworked from so many different perspectives and so many different art styles is really incredible to me. I feel like, you know, most of my favorite divination systems, with the exception of tarot, are a lot kind of less visual. I read Ogham, I read geomancy. These are systems that have, much less of an array of visual styles and options than tarot does, right? When I read Ogham, even as someone who made an Ogham deck, I mostly read staves, so like sticks of wood with Ogham inscribed on them, and geomancy is dots, right? So tarot is, really different than these in that there's all of these different kind of artistic reinterpretations of the 78 cards and their meanings. I also feel like it's distinct from Oracle in that each Oracle deck is really, in a lot of ways, its own thing, whereas different tarot decks, because of that shared kind of basis in a system, even ones that deviate quite far from it, there's a really interesting possibility of learning more about tarot by comparing different artists and creators' interpretations as a way of getting kind of new angles on the cards. So that's what I really love most about tarot in particular. Question number 3 is when? And I chose the question, which is slightly reworked. When did you first start to take tarot study seriously, or start to take tarot seriously? Not when you first started tarot, which was quite young. So for me, I got this first deck, the Jonathan D. Tarot pack, uh, at age uh, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, early teens anyway. So that was quite a long time ago now. And when I got this deck, I was very excited. I also had a set of runes that I made myself, and I would do readings for my family or for anybody who would want one. And my reading would be picking some cards out of the deck and triumphantly reading the guidebook entry. That was my style, and I would do these readings for myself as well, with much enthusiasm. And I would write down which cards I got, and you know, I I didn't really think about it as something that you would study per se. I had one deck for a very long time, and I was very guidebook reliant, and I felt very confident in my ability to choose the right card and read from the guidebook, but that was really as far as it went. And so I wasn't really thinking about, studying tarot as a system or looking at tarot history or any of these kinds of things that now fascinate me very much. I did kind of oscillate back and forth into kind of picking up my deck again and then putting it down for a few years and then finding it again, but nothing really serious. But I went back and, I went back in the archives of internet book shopping and found that the real tarot study actually started for me in 2013. In 2013, I was 2 years into a doctorate that took me 5 years to complete. Um, who knows why I was looking for something to study at that point in my life, but so it was. I think I needed something, to take up that was not related to my work ultimately. And I was watching the HBO series Carnival, which I love. I have the DVDs still. Um, and for folks who are unfamiliar with Carnival, the opening sequence has tarot cards in it. It has, like these different cards are kind of falling onto a table, and the imagery in the cards is moving, like it's animated. And there's a few characters actually in Carnival who read tarot, and there's a couple of tarot readings that kind of figure into the plot. And this kind of nudged me back, in a pretty firm way towards wanting to pick up the cards again. So at that point in 2013, I got, my first traditional Smith Waite's, the yellow box plaid backs deck. I also got a Ciro Marchetti deck at the time, and I picked up some books, and that's when, I really got interested in tarot, and I've been with it ever since that point. And, I'm happy that I still have my first ever deck, and I've been enjoying kind of orienting myself to it, having found it in the back of a closet at my parents' house after now having actually studied tarot for a longer time. So that's my when did I take tarot seriously or start really studying. Where? The question that I chose for where is where do you store your decks? And I store my decks in my bedroom. I have a custom made tarot shelf on my wall in my bedroom. So it's a kind of shelf unit. I've shown it on this channel before. It's definitely in the video. The first one that comes to mind is the kind of do I have that deck scavenger hunt tag, because I stand in front of the shelf at that point. But it's kind of three shelves that are kind of joined together and are mounted on the wall, and the bottom two shelves are all of my decks, and then the top one has some framed postcards and things that have come with decks, and a couple of candles and just kind of other odds and ends that have ended up there. And so my tarot is on this shelf made by my father. And then everything else, like oracle decks, playing card decks that are not used for like cribbage and things, um, ogham staves, dice, dominoes, they all live on a different shelf that is a tall, narrow, silver colored, technically a boot rack. It's one of these ones that's kind of like the ladder shelf where the bottom one is a bigger shelf and then they get smaller as they go up. And so that sits on the floor, and that's where my oracle and other kinds of decks live. So I have a kind of corner of the room that has the tarot decks on the shelf. Below the shelf is a trunk where I keep things like incense, old journals, candles, other kind of ritual items. And then my oracle shelf is beside that. and my tarot reading table is beside that. So I have kind of one wall of the bedroom that is kind of divination practice focused. And why? The last question, why? And I went with perhaps the most obvious question of why, like why tarot, right? Why work with tarot? Why do I work with tarot? And I've talked about this before, but I think, the straightforward answer is the right one to this one every time, and that's just that it works. I work with tarot because it works. It is helpful. It is helpful for decision making. It is helpful for sorting out feelings. It is helpful for intention setting. It is helpful for, looking into likelihoods, of what may or may not be happening, in the near future, and what I might be able to do about that. And I find that readings work for other people as well. I read for other people because there are people in my life who find it helpful. So that's the why, and that's the Tarot 5 Ws by Brian Cormac Carr. I look forward to seeing more VRs to this deck, and I will see you again soon. Thank you to Brian for starting it off. Have a good one. Bye.